Hey everyone, welcome back. For those of you who are new here, my name is Brittany. I'm a health coach and nutritionist, and my channel is all about helping you to create delicious low FODMAP meals to improve your digestive health. If you're into it, subscribe for more low FODMAP recipe tutorials, as well as my tips and tricks for managing IBS and living a low FODMAP lifestyle. Okay, so today we're going to be making miso mustard chicken. It's a classic like chicken, starch, and veggie kind of dish with like a nice gravy on there. We're actually not starting this gravy with a roux, so if roux intimidate you, you're gonna wanna try this recipe. It's super easy. Our main ingredients today are going to be miso paste. I like using a mellow white miso paste for this recipe. We're gonna be using spicy brown mustard, whole grain mustard, and coconut cream. I'm also choosing to serve this today with quinoa, but you could do rice, potatoes, whatever kind of starch you want. And then we are cooking up a medley of vegetables today for our side. I'm going to be using this opportunity to throw in a couple of Brussels sprouts. Since you can only have 2 Brussels sprouts on the low FODMAP diet at a time, I figured this is a great way to do it when you're eating other FODMAP-free vegetables. Crookneck squash is not, I don't technically have any low FODMAP information for this one. So since Monash is in Australia, they tend to test foods that they eat in Australia, and it's not necessarily the foods that we eat here in America. The way that I determined that this crookneck squash was okay was that I looked on the app and I was looking for all the squashes, and I noticed that there are summer squashes that are similar in color and texture to this crookneck squash. So I figure it's probably okay. I have eaten it many times, like since I decided to try it, and I never have any problems with squash. I just want to let you know how I kind of determine that, because you are going to have to determine these things for yourself as well. Okay, well, I think that's all I want to say about this, so let's just get started. Okay, so let's start by putting our quinoa in the rice cooker. If you don't have a rice cooker, I would highly recommend investing in one. They're inexpensive. Robert. They're inexpensive and they just cook your rice and your quinoa and your lentils. It's like perfectly every single time. So since I'm doing 2 pounds of chicken today, I'm gonna do 2 cups of quinoa. I feel like I always need to cook a little bit extra quinoa. Oh, okay, hold on. Keep barking, you want to be in the video? Come here. Okay, so I always feel like I need to cook a little bit more quinoa than I would for rice, because I feel like quinoa doesn't expand as much. I also like to put salt in my quinoa or rice, whatever I'm cooking. I typically do a teaspoon per cup. So I'm gonna put in 2 teaspoons. It really makes a difference when it comes to the flavor. You can use Foddy chicken soup base too if you want like extra flavor, but I do try to use that sparingly because it is a little bit expensive and it's kind of hard to get right now with quarantine, you know? Okay, now I've just added 4 cups of water. Quinoa is a 2-to-1 ratio, just like rice. Now I'm just gonna put the lid in, push the button down, and it'll be ready in 30 minutes. It's amazing. Okay, now let's prep our veggies. I should have said the squash thing while I was cutting it. We're not going to use this whole bell pepper just because I feel like bell pepper can be overpowering. But we are using paprika in this dish, so I would like to get a little bit in there just so it like echoes the flavor. For these Brussels sprouts, I'm just going to quarter them. It's okay if some of the leaves fall off. We're just going to cook them anyway. All right, now that our veggies are done, let's head over to the stove and cook everything up. All right, guys, here I have a large saucepan, and I'm going to start it off over high heat and let it heat up just for a minute. Okay, I'm going to start by adding half a tablespoon of coconut oil. Actually, that was probably a full tablespoon. Like I said, I'm keeping this recipe dairy-free, and I chose to use coconut oil because we are going to be using coconut cream. So again, I figure the flavors will just echo each other. And add a tablespoon of garlic oil. I like to add the coconut oil because it is a saturated fat, which means it's going to be more stable at higher temperatures. That's the same thing with butter, duck fat, beef tallow, things like that. Okay, now I have 2 pounds of chicken thighs. Okay, I forgot to season those too. Whoops. But it'll be okay. I like to put the seasoning side face down. Okay, so on this side, we're going to add another teaspoon of salt, about a half a teaspoon of pepper, and some more paprika. I typically use 1 pound of salt per pound of meat. I know it can be hard to judge your seasonings on your meat because you can't taste it because it's raw, but I find that that's a general rule of thumb that works really well. Okay, now we're just gonna brown them to get a little color on one side, and then we'll flip them over. You can see I crowded these chickens a little bit too much, so they're not gonna brown as well. I should have done it in 2 batches since I have like a couple of more that are gonna need to be done separately anyway, but whatever. I know, I always mess up when I'm on camera, but I think that is the important part about the cooking at home and like cooking all the time. Like it's not always gonna be perfect, but you do just have to get it done. Like you have to get dinner on the table. So you see how this one's starting to look like white around the edges? I'm gonna see if it's ready to be flipped by like trying to loosen it. Oh no, that didn't work super well. Okay, so we're gonna wait on the other ones. See, this one's got some nice color on it. They always stick. Maybe it's the pan I use, I don't know. But it's okay because we're going to deglaze the pan and we're going to use all those chicken bits that stick to the bottom to help to flavor our sauce. See how this one came up pretty easily? That means it's like ready. We're just going to be browning these a little bit on the outside and then removing them from the heat. So let's put in this other one. Yeah, I like to make the sauce in the pot too, and I don't feel like I can do that in the cast iron for some reason. Okay, our chicken is done cooking. That took about 10-15 minutes. So when you're cooking this at home, I typically start by doing the quinoa and then doing the chicken, and then while that's cooking, I chop up the veggies. So now we're just gonna add a little bit of water to deglaze this pan while it's still on high heat. So like that's why I don't really mind if the chicken sticks, because it's just going to help to flavor our sauce. But Jeff's probably right. I probably did not wait until the pan was hot enough. I'm going to add the rest of my water. We're going to be adding a total of 2 cups. We're also going to turn the heat down to low so that our sauce doesn't evaporate while we're putting it together. Okay, so we're going to start with 1 tablespoon of miso paste. That's not. There we go. A tablespoon of whole grain mustard and 1.5 tablespoons of brown spicy mustard. We're also going to add 3 tablespoons of coconut cream. I like to use the solid part that collects on the top of the can because I feel like it's mostly fat and therefore has less FODMAPs in it. Okay, so this is just everything that was at the top of that can. It's about 3 tablespoons. Okay, we're gonna turn the heat back up to let that kind of melt. We're gonna add 1 tablespoon of Foddy chicken soup base, half a teaspoon of dried thyme, and a 1/4 teaspoon of paprika. If you're sensitive to nightshades, you can totally skip the paprika. This recipe will taste just good without it, just as good without it. Okay, so while this is coming back up to temperature, we're going to mix up our cornstarch slurry, which is going to be 1 part cornstarch to 2 parts of water. We're going to be using 2 tablespoons of cornstarch today, so we're going to be using a 1/4 cup of water, which is also 4 tablespoons. Okay, here we have our cornstarch and our water. I'm just going to give that a good whisk because it can be kind of hard. You want to make sure it's like nice and dissolved. So the way that cornstarch works is that when it hits the hot liquid, you want to dissolve it in a cold liquid, and when it hits the hot liquid, the molecule actually unfurls, and that's what thickens your sauce. Whisk that together and give it a minute to thicken up. Now that it's getting up to temperature, you see it's starting to thicken. Okay, so now we're going to add our chicken back, throw the lid on, and let it simmer for 10-15 minutes. Ooh, I'm actually going to throw in some fresh thyme also. It's completely optional, but you guys know I like to throw fresh herbs in like everything. Okay, so now this is back up to temperature. We're going to cover it, and we're going to lower the heat so it can simmer. You don't want your chicken to boil in the sauce, because even if you are cooking chicken in liquid, if you cook it at too high a temperature, it'll dry out your chicken still. So that's why you want to keep it at a simmer and not a boil. So you see, this is perfect. Okay, so now while that's cooking, let's jump over to our veggies and cook those up. Okay, now here I have a nonstick skillet that I'm going to heat up over high. I'm going to let this one heat up all the way this time. Okay, we're going to start by adding some coconut oil and some garlic oil. Okay, we're going to start with our hardest veggies first. I'm going to start with the Brussels sprouts and the bell peppers. I'm just gathering up the Brussels sprout like cores, and I'll throw the leaves that have fallen off, I'll throw those in at the end. About a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a little bit of pepper. I'm also going to throw in some fresh thyme leaves, because why not? Again, it'll work to help make our dish super cohesive. Okay, now we're going to add our squash. Add about another 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and I'm going to add a little bit more garlic oil. If you guys will remember from my summer veggies video, I like to cook squash by just leaving it in the pan and not stirring it a ton. So I feel like that's what gives you the best color. And it doesn't like break down the squash, because I know a lot of times when you try to cook squash, it gets mushy. The other thing that's very important about cooking squash like this is that you want to make sure you have enough fat in the pan to get that nice sear. So the reason I keep tilting the pan back like this is because our stove isn't exactly level, so all of the oil and everything keeps flowing to this side of the pan, and I'm trying to get it back over to this side. Yes, look at that. Look at how beautiful that is. Okay, so these are almost done. Throw these in. Just give that a quick stir to wilt those leaves down. And that's it. Oh yeah. Give the sauce a little bit of taste. See if it needs any more salt. Nope, it's perfect. All right, now let's go plate it up. All right guys, now let's just plate this up with our quinoa and veggies. One of the reasons I like serving this dish with quinoa is because it's a little bit drier and less starchy than rice, and it really absorbs the sauce well. Just gonna throw a little bit more pepper or thyme on here. Ooh, maybe some paprika on the chicken just for color. You could use green onion if that's what you have on hand. It doesn't really matter. All right, guys, we have everything all plated up, so now let's give it a taste. Oh my God, this sauce is so good. This sauce is just like amazing. I like want a spoon right now, so I can just eat the sauce. It has a little bit of tang from the mustard, and you can feel those, like the whole grain mustard in there. It gives it nice texture. The miso paste gives it like an amazing like umami flavor, nice complexity. I love putting the sauce all over my quinoa. Veggies are so good. They're nice and crisp still. And they have like a nice layer of flavor on them, and you can actually taste the little bit of thyme that we threw in there. Super good. All right, guys, there you have it. Creamy miso mustard chicken in about 30 minutes. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, for sticking around till the end. Please subscribe to this channel if you would like more low FODMAP recipe tutorials, and go ahead and check out my Patreon if you would like to support my channel. I really appreciate everyone who does that. I think that's it. So see you guys next time.